Many times, as we grow up, we forget the tremendous effort our parents made for us. We overlook the time they spent with us, patiently and tenderly taking care of our needs. That's why we should reconsider and be grateful, and if we still have them by our side, love them and show them how much we value the unconditional love they had for us. I remember when I still had my father by my side. He was an exemplary and very affectionate man. To him, I was his princess, and that's how I felt. He loved my mother and loved me equally. We were very happy throughout all the time we spent together. My father and I were always very close. I remember that, as a child, we spent whole days playing. He taught me how to play chess and many lessons that helped me become the strong woman I am today. But what I liked the most was when he'd pick me up and spin me around. I felt so happy feeling my feet off the ground while he held me in his strong arms. Before I finished my studies in medicine, my father left this world. I can't express how much I miss my little Indian, a mix of happiness and joy I felt that day. But at the same time, I felt very proud to have achieved that goal. My mother was very happy. She has always been an unconditional support in my life. Together, we overcame difficult trials. We couldn't hold back the tears when we hugged. I remember that time when I met Oscar, who would become my husband. It was a very busy day at the hospital. We were swamped, both doctors and nurses. We couldn't take it anymore. Oscar had a work accident when he fell from a great height at the construction site where he was found. He was unconscious, and when he woke up, he didn't know exactly where he was. He had a deep cut on his forehead, was bleeding, and had lost a lot of blood. It was only when one of his colleagues found him and called emergency services. When he arrived at the hospital, it was a miracle that I was available at that moment to take him through trauma care and check for any other possible injuries that poor man might have had. While conducting the necessary exams and stabilizing him, I realized that besides the injury on the frontal part of the skull he had some fractures in one of his hands that needed to be stabilized to prevent further damage. Similarly, his legs were affected, causing him pain, although they didn't show more than a few bruises that would disappear over time. Thankfully, the injury on his forehead didn't seem to pose a major risk. He only needed a few stitches to close the wound, 22 stitches. I remember as the days passed, he seemed to be doing very well until the day he was discharged. However, he would have to keep returning to the hospital to continue evaluating and treating the injuries. Some weeks passed, and he came to the hospital very diligently for his evaluation. I personally took the responsibility to check his hand until everything was fine. Only then did I realize he was a very handsome man with strong hands. But what surprised me the most was the invitation he made to me during one of the evaluations, out of the blue, to go out for a drink. I didn't expect it, and he seemed so self-assured. I didn't see any problem, so I agreed. We arranged to meet in 5 hours, which was when my shift ended. We went to a cafe where we had a very warm conversation. He told me he was very grateful for all the care I had provided him, and that he liked me and, if possible, would like to keep seeing each other. I couldn't help but blush, and as I smiled at him, he said there was no problem following that path, so we could get to know each other better. We continued to go out as we had planned, and over time, we established a relationship. Officially, we were already dating. We were very happy and things were going really well. Somehow, he reminded me of my father because he made me feel very protected in his arms. I think I was really in love with that man. When we had been dating for 3 years, we took it to the next level and got engaged. He was handsome, and I was in my wedding dress, and he didn't take his eyes off me, always with that certainty of knowing what he wants, which always characterized him. It was an unforgettable moment. I had married the man I loved. One day, I realized I was late. I mentioned it to Oscar, and we took a pregnancy test at home. We were very nervous, counting the minutes, waiting for the result. The moment arrived, we looked at the test, and it was positive. We're going to have a baby. Happiness overwhelmed us. He was very happy, and that comforted me. When we went to the doctor in the 5th month, we would finally find out if it was a boy or a girl. The doctor began the ultrasound and took his time until he finally told us, "Girl. It's a girl." We were so happy. "We're going to have a girl." We almost said it at the same time. We started decorating our daughter's room. Oscar was in charge of painting the room, and I collaborated with the design. He was very committed, and that made me feel very proud of him. When the baby was born, we spent wonderful moments with our little girl. We were so happy to finally have her in our arms. She was so small and very cute. We couldn't help but melt with love when we saw her. Sometimes, my mother would come and spend time with the girl, even though she said she was too old to take care of a baby, which made me realize that I should also find someone to help me when I started working. So, I set out on this task and started looking for recommendations. I managed to get in touch with a lady who was recommended to me, but on the day I did my first shift back at the hospital, she called me and said she couldn't come, that she was sorry. But she was ill, and it wasn't possible for her to take care of the girl in that state. I didn't know what to do, and now, what was I going to do with my baby, who was already 11 months old and needed more attention? I decided to look for someone who could take care of her. At that moment, Oscar, who had left work early that day, arrived. I couldn't believe it. Just when I was about to give up and was about to call the hospital to see if someone could replace me, I explained the situation to him, and he saw no problem. He said he would take care of it, that I shouldn't worry about anything. I started getting ready for work, and while I was getting ready, I came across a camera, which led me to a great idea. Without Oscar noticing, I hid it so that I could see him while he was with the girl, but without him discovering where it was. I left to say goodbye to the girl and Oscar, telling them to call me if anything and that I would be there. I couldn't reach Oscar for the rest of the day. It was a hectic day where I didn't even have time to have lunch, and I hadn't even eaten an apple one had in my pocket. I had patient after patient until the end of the shift. I was a bit worried since Oscar hadn't tried to contact me either. When I got home, everything was silent, which gave me chills. However, I didn't say a word and went to find Oscar and the girl. When I found them, I couldn't believe it. They were both together in bed, sleeping. They looked so beautiful that my eyes filled with tears between tranquility and joy. I left the room and prepared to watch the camera footage, which made me cry. There was Oscar with the girl, playing all the time. The girl was crawling, and he was behind her. Then I saw them picking up toys and spreading them all over the room. It was so beautiful to see them so happy. Oscar reminded me once again of the wonderful time I could share with my father. Just like he used to play with me, Oscar was doing it with our daughter. I was sure that besides having a wonderful husband, I had an excellent father for our girl. Children are precious gifts that brighten our lives, treasures that we have to cultivate carefully so that their fruits are strong and don't deteriorate throughout life, so that they can pave their own paths, remembering to teach them that time and love are the best ways to educate. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. A big hug, and see you soon.